Hello all. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to another video from Let's DevOps. In today's video, we are going to see how to integrate a version control system with Jenkins. Why do we want to do that? We want to do that because we want to set up CI or continuous integration. What is continuous integration? The moment a code change has been done and pushed to a Git repository, then the CI system, the pipeline tool, CI/CD tool, must identify that there is a change that has been pushed into a repository, and so I must trigger my pipeline for that branch. That's basically CI. So without wasting much time, let's get started. Right, if you had followed my episode 1 of Jenkins and installation, you would know that we installed Jenkins and spinned up our Jenkins instance on localhost 8080. Right, that's where we are, and there is nothing that I've created on this new instance that I just installed. So let's get started in creating a first pipeline job. And as a part of creating the first pipeline job, let's see how we can integrate the SCM system with Jenkins and also set up this continuous integration. On the left side, you see new item. Let's click on that and let's give a name for our pipeline. Let's name it as my first CI pipeline. And there are different types of jobs that you can set up on Jenkins. Again, I'm not getting into the details of each of it, but they are self-explanatory. If you read each of the job types, they are pretty clear as to what their purpose is. In our case, or in most of the industry cases, as a DevSecOps engineer, you create multi-branch pipelines. Why multi-branch pipelines? Because every repository can have a different branching strategy, and more commonly, let's say there should be a development branch and there should be a release branch. The pipeline stages for a development branch could be different from the pipeline stages of a release branch, and that's exactly why we have this feature called multi-branch pipeline, wherein you can configure different stages for different branches based on what branch we are triggering the pipeline from. So let's go ahead and use this multi-branch pipeline, but also just feel free to play around with other uh, job types. Right, let's give an OK. Sorry. Again, display name, I would still give my first CI pipeline and branch sources. So for this demo, we need a version control tool system so that we can integrate with Jenkins. Now I'm using GitHub as my version control system, and this is my GitHub SK16, and then there is multiple repositories that I have. And for this demo, I'm going to use one of my repositories that I have, which is a simple React application for counter app. Right. Again, description, some logical description, branch sources, or basically SCM source. What is our version control system? For GitHub, Jenkins itself provides a specific tab for GitHub. If you are using any other version control system like a Bitbucket or Azure repos or GitLab repos, then you can choose on simply Git. Now that we have GitHub as our version control system, let's choose GitHub. So what do we have? It opens up a block, and uh, importantly, it asks for the repository HTTPS URL. So I go to my repository and then copy the HTTPS URL, come back to Jenkins and paste it in here. Will this itself be enough to set up the connectivity between Jenkins and GitHub? Obviously not. To check that, click on validate. It very clearly says it is not able to connect to the repository and there is an issue. If I open the logs, I can see that there is a 404 error, which means that it is not able to recognize the repository that we mentioned. And it also gives you a prompt of what's missing. It is the credentials are recommended or basically needed. So you need a credentials to authenticate the Jenkins to this version control system and specifically this repository that we want to connect with. If I go to credentials, now I already have a credentials created that will help me set up this connectivity between Jenkins and GitHub. If I click on this and give a validate, you can see that the error is gone and Jenkins is now able to communicate with this version control system. Uh, it might be too long to squeeze in all this credentials part as well, but stay tuned. I'm going to make a separate video on how this credentials was created on the GitHub side and how we can add it on the Jenkins side is for the next video that is going to come up. So please stay tuned to the space to get this missing piece also known. Uh, Maybe an information. What is this credentials? This credentials is one of the plugins that we installed during the start. If you remember, there are these recommended installations that Jenkins does, and as a part of that, you have this credentials plugin also getting installed. Credentials plugin is the plugin used by Jenkins to manage all of your secrets. Again, not too much details. That is for the next video, so please stay tuned. Once this credentials is uh, set up and we do this validate, we for sure know that the integration is set up. Next, there are different strategies that you can configure for this integration with version control tool. Like, do we want to exclude the branches that are also filed as PRs, or include them, or just have all branches? I would suggest let's go with all branches because we want Jenkins to detect all of the branches that is part of the repository, the version control repository. Otherwise, you can keep all of the other configurations same. Again, as I always say, just play around tweaking the configurations to understand what each of it does better. But for now, this is the more important configuration. So let's select all branches for Discover branches and then come down. That's pretty much it for this block. And then you have build configuration. Now, there is only one option provided for this build configuration, which is by Jenkins file. What's a Jenkins file? If you have worked with other version control, CI/CD tools, you need to write the pipeline as a configuration as a code. So you basically write it as a YAML file in case of GitLab or Bitbucket. You know that we write the Bitbucket pipeline.yaml. In case of GitLab, we write the GitLab CI.yaml. Similarly, for Jenkins, you should write this pipeline as a Jenkins file. Not you should. There are two ways of writing it. You can also write it directly on the job, but for that you need to choose a different job type. We saw that we choose the multi-branch pipeline, but if you choose the normal pipeline method, there I can probably show you once we finish this. But for this job type, you the build configuration is only Jenkins file. And uh, let's come back to this version control repository because that is where the Jenkins file is going to sit. This Jenkins file, as I said, is the pipeline. It's similar to your Bitbucket pipelines.yaml, where your actual pipeline code is sitting. It's doing nothing fancy. It's just doing a starts with a stage hello, and then it echoes hello world. That's the content of this Jenkins file. And if you see that the path of this Jenkins file is directly on the root, there it is not recursively put under any subfolders, which you can also do. But if you do that, if you let's say create a folder called Jenkins file and then you drop it inside that folder because you have multiple Jenkins file and you can play around with the different stages, then the only additional thing that you need to do is script path. Instead of the root path, you just need to give the navigations of where exactly the Jenkins file is sitting. Right? And one final thing is this part, but I will not check this box for now so that I can show you what happens if not and what happens if it's checked. So save. The moment you save this, it's going to run something called as a scan repository log to see if all of our configurations that we have specified looks clean. What is it going to check? It is going to check if the connectivity with the version control system is good. If yes, then it is going to go ahead and scan this repository to fetch all of the different branches that is sitting in this repository. For now, there is only main, but we can create one more and see if it is detecting. So that it will do. Third is for the build configuration, it definitely requires a Jenkins file in the defined path, and it is also going to check if that is also available. So checking branches, getting all the remote branches, it found main as the only branch, and it has also successfully found a Jenkins file sitting in the location that we specified. Everything looks good, and it ends with a success. Right, I go back to my my first CI pipeline job, and it will have an individual job for each of the branch that is it identifies. So that's the beauty of this job type. Let's say I go ahead and create another job, branch. I would say something, let's say developer, which is created from main, and another job called release that is created not from developer, from main as well, right? So now this repository has 3 branches. If I come back and to get those branches reflected into this job, all I need to do is scan repository now. And I give a refresh. Boom, it has detected all of the other 2 branches that we just created and it starts reflecting. Right, now let's go to main, and it has by default triggered the pipeline for main as well as a part of your initial um, scan that it does. It identified it has main branch and it immediately triggered the pipeline as well, but that's only for the first time. Now if I want to set up CI, basically continuous integration, then as per our concept, the moment I do a code change, then Jenkins should identify, okay, in this repository, this specific branch that I have has a code change, then I need to trigger the uh, pipeline. Let's see if it does. So let me just probably pick up some file and I will edit a small code on the UI, not the best practice, but just for demo purpose. I do a commit and I go back to my Jenkins and wait here to see if Jenkins is identifying that there has been a change that is done and I need to trigger a pipeline. I've waited for nearly 30 seconds now. Probably I'll give it another 30 seconds as well. I don't see anything happening. Nope, nothing. And that's expected. Why? Because there is one configuration that we need to select to set up this CI or continuous integration. And that is come back to your main job and go to configure, come here, scan repository triggers, and then click on this. And the very least amount of time is 1 minute. So it basically means that this pipeline, this Jenkins job will constantly be scanning the repository every 1 minute. And the moment it identifies a code change, and in the next 1 minute, it is going to update any new branches that has been created, any code change that has been committed, then it knows for sure that I need to trigger a pipeline immediately. Right, so let me go ahead and save this configuration. And if I very quickly go to main, nothing so far. So I go back to my version control tool, system now, to my repository, and I induce a code change. Ah, okay. I know what's happening. I probably triggered it on release, and that's where the job has been triggered, but not instantaneously. You see that we had to wait for 4 minutes and nothing triggered. But the moment I set up this configuration, apply the code change and apply the configuration change and then come back, there is a job that is triggered because it scanned immediately the repository and it identified there was a code change and it has triggered a new job. Let's do it one more time to see it in real time. Now we are in the branch main. Let me then navigate to my main branch. Nothing here, just the first initial job. I come here and I change one more file. Commit, commit, zoop. I jump back to Jenkins. Now, hopefully, Jenkins identifies there is a commit and boom, we have. It starts with pending because it quickly sets itself to an executor and then immediately triggers a job. It's a success. If I jump in, you can see that there is hello world that is printed with a success message. Perfect. All right, that's pretty much it I had for today's session. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and Please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. I am going to definitely post something in my next video wherein most of my viewers who like my content have not subscribed to my YouTube channel yet. So I please request you to do that. Otherwise, have a nice rest of the day to all of you. We'll meet you in another video that will come soon regarding Jenkins credentials. Until then, take care. Bye bye. See you all.